जय भारत। वेलकम टू डेफ टॉक्स क्लिप्स बाय आदि अचिंत। जैसे ही आपने मेरे बड़े चैनल जो डेफ टॉक्स बाय आदि है उसको आपने जिस तरह से सपोर्ट करा, उसी तरह से ये हमारे क्लिप्स के चैनल को, जहां पर आपको छोटे छोटे अपडेट्स, छोटे छोटे शॉर्ट्स और छोटी छोटी कहानियां मिलेंगी, इसी को भी सपोर्ट जरूर कीजिएगा। लाइक का बटन जरूर दबाइए, सब्सक्राइब तो ऑब्वियसली करिए, बेल आइकॉन दबाना बिल्कुल मत भूलिएगा। एंड हाँ जी, प्लीज अपने दोस्तों के साथ, फैमिलीज के साथ ये वीडियोस जरूर शेयर करिएगा। एंजॉय करिए ये क्लिप को। जय हिंद। सर जी, पहले ये बताओ, I mean, you cover, you've been also looking at international geopolitics quite a bit. So do I. A lot of stuff is happening in the world right now. One observation that I have is that the left is kind of getting very desperate with the way that they've done the protests in the colleges. Keen resemblance to the BLM. They wanted to hit a lot of stuff within the ecosystem or the economy of the Americans and stuff like that. How do you see these desperate actions? If I may, if you agree with me or not, I don't know. But I'd call them desperate actions of the left.
Are you talking about protests in colleges in the US?
Yes. US, UK,
Yeah.
they've actually spread all around the place now.
Yeah.
We had a few, by the way.
We had a few. Okay. I wasn't aware. I was not looking at what's
Yeah,
happening
Ashoka
back here.
University, Azim Premji's university, and
I see.
which is that other one? Jindal University.
Okay. These private universities and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, not very surprising. Not very surprising.
Free Palestine.
Palestine. Palestine से हमारा क्या लेना देना है? I don't get it.
Oh, Kashmir
Even when
connection, no?
Kashmir connection. Yes, of course. Somehow Palestine and Kashmir are connected, apparently.
Somehow.
So when it comes to the US, we know that there's been this complete academic capture of the colleges and universities and the entire ecosystem by the West. And this has been brewing for quite a few decades. And now it's very, very, very apparent. It's very obvious. People get cancelled. Reputed professors get thrown out. People have to move out and go somewhere else, and all that is happening. And these days we are witnessing this very strong pro-Palestine, anti-Israel sentiment in the United States campuses, which is very strange. I recently had Dr. Brian Keating on my podcast. He's a physicist, he's a cosmologist, and he is witnessing this. He is of Jewish origin, and it's amazing that this nation, the US, which one would say is the strongest ally of Israel, you see this sentiment, this very strong sentiment that is pro-Palestine and anti-Israel. Uh, he was saying it's outright anti-Semitic and all that. So yes, and we know the connection, like you just mentioned, between the pro-Palestine sentiment among these Westerners and the Kashmir thing. So they always and there's this entire lobby in the US, the Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omars and all that, who don't miss any chance to connect Palestine and Kashmir. Kashmir is a non-issue, as we know. I mean, the government in the past 10 years has totally, taken care of Kashmir in the sense that Kashmir is now a great place to live in. Tourism is booming like never before in decades. So Kashmir is doing fantastic. But these people, they want to use all these issues as pressure points against India. They want to use this as pressure points against India. No issues. And yeah, so now, right now, what we are seeing is this pro-Palestine protests, anti-Israel protests, but they can very rapidly be turned into anti-India protests, and either what the Khalistan thing or the Kashmir thing or any other issue. They can even bring out Manipur. Allegedly, the what minorities are under threat in Manipur also. So you'll see this in some places on social media. Especially the Christian angle, the evangelist Catholic church angle, because they are the ones who are controlling the narrative over there, and they've been in place for the past 60-70 years, thanks to Shri Nehru ji. So yes, we are witnessing this. They can bring out any of these angles whenever it suits them. And right now, we in India, we are in the general elections right now, in the middle of that. I think one phase to go, and about 8-9 days before the results are out. So I think the West, whoever is actually running the West, obviously it's not Mr. Biden or Miss Kamala Harris. Whoever is truly running the show, the grand puppeteers, they are aware that most likely, and I hope so, Mr. Modi will come back with a big majority. And I think they're setting the stage for the actions they will take vis-a-vis narrative building and all that after Mr. Modi comes to power. So we have been seeing this for quite some time, all over social media. All these disposable minions, the think tank experts, the various journalists, the Guardian publication people, the New York Times, New York Post, Washington Post people, and the various Gangadins and brown coolies of Indian origin who work for these people and who are happy to write these op-eds and whatever. So they have been doing this for quite some time, at least 2 years, especially after February 2022, when Mr. Putin launched the special military operation and India refused to go ahead with the sanctions. Ever since then, they have been bombarding social media with these anti-India narratives that India uh, is supporting Russian fascism, and India's democracy is backsliding, and India is becoming more authoritarian and all that. So I think they are setting the groundwork, putting the groundwork in right now to attack India once Mr. Modi comes back to power in the Modi 3.0 government, it happens, which we hope it happens. And yeah, so that is where we are right now. So all of this is interconnected. The various toolkits that we speak about, the various actors on the ground in India that they have, who espouse that cause, whatever cause they are told to support, they will do that. As part of the toolkit, they'll be given a toolkit, and they'll be told all the talking points and all that, and then they just go and you know uh, they go and repeat that. All these various actors that we have within India, these disposable minions within India as well. So all of this is going on right now. They have a very good network. It's a very well established, entrenched network. Some would even allege that they have created allegedly artificial political parties in India, one or two maybe, and that can also be brought into the mix whenever required. So yeah, and I'll tell you what. When it comes to India's relations with various nations, we have good relations with almost everybody. From our perspective, we have great relations with the nations in the Middle East. We have great relations with Russia, good
Mhm.
relations with Iran, and good relations with various EU nations. And we also strive to have excellent relations with the US. And the US says that the India US relationship is the most consequential relationship of the 21st century, blah, 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 blah. But I see a split happening at some point in time, India US split. The Americans see India now as a long term adversary, as a long term competitor, at least, if not adversary. We are not the hegemonic kind of nation that China is, so we're not going to be like that. But yes, India's economy is growing. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, and that's not very good for them. So the only utility, India has limited utility from the US perspective. They see us as a good viable counterweight to China, but that's all, not nothing more than that. They don't want to see India rise to 10 trillion, $15 trillion economy status. So we're going to see more tensions between India and the US. At some point, there's going to be some kind of decoupling of sorts, and the way forward is not going to be very very smooth sailing. It's going to be increasingly rocky. That's the way I see it.
That's interesting because when you look at what Mr. Modi is also saying, कि भाई 4 जून के बाद हम देखेंगे कितना कौन बोलता है.
Hmm.
So that also means that they are, and as a matter of fact, one of the interesting things that both Mr. Jaishankar and Mr. Modi have mentioned during their interviews is that we know there is a global elite. Mr. Jaishankar the other day on Smita's this thing, he said what a international Khan market. They didn't kind of mention
Okay.
the proverbial deep state, and you don't want to say these words, right? But you've kind of
Hmm.
called them out. How do you see this call out? Because this is the first time probably a nation, I don't see anybody else, even Russia for that matter, calling out the internal game within the Americans. It's not the external enemy that you're talking about. You're talking about, we know what happens behind the curtains, and we'll deal with you when the time comes. Now that is a very interesting sort of a call out. How do you look at it?
Uh, I think it's no secret that there exists this deep state, this
Yeah.
network that truly controls the reins of power in the US. By now, it's clear to those who have any understanding of the way things are that the US is no democracy. It's a two-party state, and that too is the official thing. So behind that, it's an autocracy. It's an authoritarian nation masquerading as a democracy. It doesn't believe in international law. They recently they have lashed out at the International Court of Justice. They want to sanction that, and they are like, no, sovereignty is the most important thing for us. We don't, you know. We will not compromise on our sovereignty. So that makes it very clear that every nation that goes ahead and goes along with what the ICJ says is kind of losing sovereignty, and only the US has the right to be a sovereign nation. So we know the way things work in the US, but I think calling it out openly is kind of a dangerous thing to do. I'm not sure if it's the right thing, because the deep state, I mean, what we call
They're
the deep
powerful.
state, it's been very, very powerful. They've taken out US presidents. I mean, few of them have been lucky. Like Nixon was lucky that he was only impeached and thrown out. We know what happened to Kennedy. He was 1963, and I was worried that even Donald Trump could be 1963. Because he's not on the good side, and he's spoken about what cleaning this, draining the swamp in Washington.
Draining the
That
swamp.
obviously is, yeah, that obviously is an allusion to the entrenched deep state, the unelected, permanently in
Bureaucracy.
power people, yeah, in the Pentagon and wherever else, in Maryland, etc. So it's interesting that I was not aware of the fact that Dr. Jaishankar had spoken about this, the international Khan market, which obviously is an allusion to that only, the global elites. Khan market is the Delhi wala elites, so international Khan market is the global entrenched elites. So the extra democratic power centers that exist in the world, and they obviously, we know where they exist. I mean, we'll not go into the details, but it's interesting that he has actually spoken about this. What does that tell us? It tells us that I think things are coming to kind of a head, and it's becoming quite open now, that the US
Mhm.
is very strongly and very blatantly trying to hamper India's growth. I'm not saying India's rise, because we're not trying to rise as a geopolitical militaristic power, but we are growing as an economy. And the way to stymie India's future rise, so to say, is to hamper India's economic growth, and to create various kinds of narratives about India. Because if you want to hamper India's economic growth, you have to create a narrative that India is an authoritarian nation, a fascist state, blah
Hmm.
blah blah, so that
Hmm.
liberal democracies will be hesitant to work with India. And if a nation in the EU wants to invest in India, and have a partnership, then you can call them out and say that, hey, you're partnering with an authoritarian nation, and their leader is in the same league as Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi and Mr. Kim Jong Un and whatever. But they will start using the word strong man for Mr.
Yeah.
Modi.
Mhm.
Yeah, strong man. Whenever there's a leader they don't like, they call that person a strong man. So recently, Mr. Xi Jinping went to Europe. He met with Mr. Orban and whoever else. So those were automatically termed as strong men. So they use these dog whistles, which signify certain things, and that's what's happening. So yeah, it's interesting that Dr. Jaishankar spoke about the
Mhm.
international Khan market. I think it's dangerous to actually refer to this, because that kind of brings the tensions out in the open, and that, well, it tells them that, yeah, you're fair game now. So interesting.
जय हिंद। जाने से पहले मैं 1 मिनट के लिए आपको रोक लूं, तो प्लीज ये चैनल को लाइक जरूर करिएगा, सब्सक्राइब करिएगा, और हाँ, हमारे जो मेन चैनल को जरूर जरूर अपनी फॉलोशिप दीजिए, ताकि हम आपको अच्छे अच्छे पॉडकास्ट, इंपॉर्टेंट सब्जेक्ट्स एंड जियोपॉलिटिकल अपडेट से आपके सामने प्रेजेंट करते रहें इसी तरह से। थैंक यू सो मच। जय हिंद, जय भारत।